If you think of the expense receipt workflow, maybe on the mobile device, you're capturing those expense receipts, the corporate card is used, that information comes back, gets tied into an expense claim, and then overall reconciliation with the corporate card statement. Well, part of that issue is what happens when there's a refund or a return to one of those expenses, and that was tied to the corporate card. And now you need to go out and get a credit for that return. And maybe a project manager had to visit the client site, paid for information in the hotel accommodation on the corporate card, but then that site visit got canceled or shortened, and now something was refunded back to the corporate card. How can you process that refund? Well, before 24R1, those expense receipts paid with the corporate card, you weren't able to process the refund or that negative expense receipt. With 24R1, I'm happy to say that a negative expense receipt can now be entered when paid with the corporate card right inside the expense receipt, and then processing within the expense claim. You'll see on the screen the negative amount, the tip amount if there is one associated with it, the tax information. So now you can enter those negative amounts to then take care of those refunds. Now that ties back into and creates the accounts payable cash return document right there from the workflow. So let's go ahead and take a look at the demonstration. So in this example, let's look at what happens if it was only a couple days less or a day less for on-site training. One of the easier ways to do the negative expense receipt is to call up an existing receipt. In this case, I'll got the 3 days of training. I'll copy that. Then I'll add a new one, simply paste in the prior activity, and in this case, make it a -1 for the individual days. You'll notice that now the amount is a negative, and we'll apply that to the same cost code. We notice it's going to the corporate card and the company expense. Now that simply, I can go ahead and reverse or subtract the day from the training, give me a $129 credit against that particular expense receipt. Go ahead and claim that receipt, and now go add those negative expenses right back into an expense claim for the negative amount. Now recording that and applying that into the corporate card. Very simple process, being able to go in and apply credit or a refund with the expense receipt. Now tie that in for future reconciliations. So recapping what we just saw with the expense receipt improvements is that now employees can enter negative expense receipts to make a full or partial refund to the corporate card, and that allows finance to later match those expenses with the card statements when reconciling the card balance as well as what needs to be entered into the corresponding general ledger account.